Morning, my name's Jane from Haberdasher. Welcome to Sewing Bee Unpicked. This is Series 7, Episode 3. This is Gents Classic Week. This week the sewers had to make a baker's boy hat, a la Peaky Blinders. Then there was the transformation challenge to turn some gents' tailor jackets into a lady's garment. And then the made to measure challenge was to make a men's utility jacket. So it was nice to see some male models in the studio this time. Quite pleasing on the eye, weren't they? So let me get on with some patterns. Men's patterns are far fewer than ladies' patterns, so did struggle a bit to find anything, especially within the McCall's range. There's quite a few independent patterns out there, so I'll just run through them quickly. First of all, I was just going to the buffet dress behind me. That was from week 1, which I haven't actually done a debrief on, but that was McCall's pattern 8090. So there's still haven't managed to work out which side I should be sitting and where I actually need to hold it. I should have done that first, shouldn't I? So this pattern comes sleeveless or with sleeves, and you can do it with 3 tiers like the one behind me, or just 2 tiers to make it a shorter length sort of dress tunic. It was quite a straightforward pattern to do. It's kind of got a faux placket on the front. It's just facings and then they crossed over, so there's no tricky stitching on that one. The most difficult bit is all the gathers, and in fact it's not that gathered, which makes it a little bit harder because you have to really space the gathers out to make it look nice and even. Anyway, that was week 1. We're talking about Gents Classic Week. So the baker's boy hat, this really showed up those sewers who could do precise sewing and those who weren't so experienced, that kind of thing. When you're making, the pattern they used was 8 specifically shaped segments that you had to stitch together to form a circle. So you can imagine if you got your cutting slightly off, or your seam allowance, it was all going to go to pot. And unfortunately it did for a few of the sewers. The other thing is they were using quite thick fabrics, so the tweed fabrics they were using, they're a bit trickier to sew, especially when you're doing precise sewing. So there were a number of issues here, and it was quite a tricky challenge. So pattern wise, I couldn't find a pattern within the McCall's range. There was a Vogue pattern 8869 apparently. Obviously we don't stock Vogue, unfortunately, which has got some hats on it. However, I did find this rather cute kids version 6762, and it's got a really cute little flat cap here, and it's also got various different bucket style sun hats as well. So that's quite a cute pattern. 6762 comes in 1 size. You might be able to scale it up for an adult if you were feeling brave. So the other thing about sewing hats is you're working with quite a small circle, so getting the band on was going to be quite difficult because you're sewing in quite a tight circle, and then of course you're sewing thick fabric and you've got that peak as well, so you have to be precise where that goes. So people who struggled were Damien, who struggled with his cutting out. I think Patrick sort of pointed out a few things to him and he neatened up some edges. This, when you're doing precision stuff, you have to get these things right. Also, he didn't line his peak up with the kind of triangles that made up the circle, so he just kind of put it on. He didn't think about whether it was lined up with 2 segments or 1 segment was going to be in the middle, so it was all out of alignment really. Lorato struggled as well. She didn't have a good week, did she? And Adina bizarrely didn't use a matching thread, used a black thread on a pale grey fabric, so where the stitching wasn't so precise, the stitching showed. So it's important to match your thread to your fabric. Is what we can take away from that. Serena and Raf and Adam all did really well. Ed, what's her name? God, I've forgotten her name. They didn't like half and half pattern fabric choices, where you should half a hat in blue and half in sort of a tan colour. But they did appreciate the sewing, so that's good. Raf, he's very good at choosing the right fabrics and working out the best way to place them. So that's one of his strengths, but his sewing was really good as well. And Adam's was really good. He did alternate in blues. Yeah, so they all looked really good. Transformation challenge, an hour and a half to make something which isn't really wearable. I don't really get it. There were some better ideas this week. I think there were also quite some lazy ideas. I don't mean to sound disparaging. I think Farry's was just the jacket turned around and a couple of darts put in. But Serena's was really clever, the way she took the lapels and the sleeves, and she created a whole different shape by piecing different shape pieces together. It was quite an engineering project. So, she justly won that challenge. And it was an almost wearable item. I've seen something similar in the Jo Brown's catalogue. So, yeah, she did a really good job there. Right, and then we go on to the made to measure challenge, which was the utility jacket. I have found a few patterns for utility jackets, and there's quite a few indie patterns out there for men's utility jackets. As I said earlier, the bigger companies, there's not a lot of stylish clothing in the men's patterns, so you have to go to the indie patterns to find things. So there's the Friday Pattern Company, Wardrobe by Me, Sew Over It, Waffle Patterns, Closet Core. You have to download them and print them off at home and stick them all together. But there are companies that will print off on large format paper. It costs sort of £3 or £4 per pattern, so you just have to kind of factor that into your pattern price. So jackets varied. Just going to have a slurp. On the whole, they were really good. They were really impressive. I've not made a jacket for a long time, and I don't think I've ever made a men's jacket. I've made a waistcoat and with the welt pockets, and there is quite a lot of precision sewing in jackets with pockets and zips, and all buttons, because obviously you have to get the pockets are so visible on these utility jackets. You have to get them absolutely perfect. And Andrew, who did the blue with the orange contrast, I mean, he had blue jackets with orange pockets, so they really stood out. He cut his a bit too small for his model, but he saved that really, really well. And they kind of brushed over it a bit. Patrick said, "Oh yeah, I think you did quite a good job." I think he did an amazing job. And that he turned the facing, it was going to be the facing on the inside at the front, he pulled that out and probably put another strip on the inside, so he had an extra orange band down the front, and I actually think it made the jacket look better because it kind of tied it all together. He also had pockets on the inside, so there was a lot of sewing that he did, and he got it finished. So that's him ticked off. He gets a tick from me. Catherine's, really good fabric. It's like kind of camouflagey fabric, lovely model, and he had really long arms, and they didn't mention it at all. It was the first thing I noticed about his jacket. The sleeves, when he walked down, sorry, you can't see, his sleeves were like where mine are. They stopped way short of his wrist, but they didn't say anything about that. Well, I thought, but it was a really nice jacket. Rebecca did a Raglan sleeve. So this well, it's just not a very good example. A lot of jackets, they have the sleeve here. So the sleeve is set into a sleeve head. A raglan sleeve is when the sleeve is across there. So the piece, the top of the sleeve is at the neck, okay, and the seam is down here. So they don't need so much fitting on the shoulders, not that many things do fit on the shoulders these days, they tend to be a bit drop shoulders. So that's what they meant about her raglan sleeve, but that was quite a nice pattern. Damien's cowboy shirt, what made me laugh most was his model and the way he stood there. But there we go. And his corduroy, it was a nice looking jacket. It looked quite shirty, I thought, that he made it out of corduroy. Adam and his little nautical themes and his anchor buttons. I know somewhere where you can get lots of anchor buttons. And they pointed out they wished he'd put a matching silver zip in as well, and I noticed that too. It was like, why did he put a plastic zip in when the features were silver? And this is what they're looking for now. They are looking for you to create the whole package and think about the overall look and finishing. And talking about finishing, Lorato's jacket, she spent so much time at the beginning thinking about the little details, the feet, the stud pockets, the studs on the pockets, that she completely ran out of time. So she didn't prioritize the right things. You have to make the jacket, but she could have put the studs on afterwards. Actually Farry used the same pattern. You could tell it was because of the shape of the pockets. They weren't square set, they were slightly offset, so they were narrow at one end. Farry's jacket, she squared off the bottom, whereas Lorato's, it kind of went up a bit like that at the front, like a blazer. But I'm 99% sure they used the same pattern, but Farry, who won, she just adjusted it slightly, and she didn't put studs on the pockets. And who finished. Farry's was a really lovely colour fabric, that kind of tealy blue fabric. I thought it looked really good. What else have I got to say? Adina, she saved hers. She was putting a zip in the front, and you put the zip on the front of the placket so that you can. No, she was supposed to put it behind the placket, and then the flap goes over and hides the zip. She'd done it wrong, and she'd put it on the wrong side. So she saved it by having an exposed zip, which actually did look quite good. So she was quite lucky that she could save that. Right, I'll show you some patterns. I didn't get any fabrics out. We have got corduroy, needle cord and jumbo cord, and we've got fleece, but we haven't really got any tweedy fabrics. We've got some waterproof outdoor fabrics. They're quite lightweight, but with a lining they're perfectly acceptable for making jackets and coats. Right, so I showed you the hat pattern, cute little hat pattern. So McCall's, the next one is a McCall's 7638. Oh, I'm gonna come over here. There we go. So it's men's and boys. They've shown the sort of jacket shirt with contrast sleeves, but you can do it all in one. And you could pad this out a bit as well, I guess, with a bit of quilting fabric, but that's quite a nice shape. It's got big patch pockets on the front here. It's actually got pockets in the side seams as well. I can see where he's put his hand there. Okay. McCall's 7637. It's a couple of bomber jackets, his and hers, either with or without a hood. And you can either have just a stand-up collar or a proper collar. McCall's 7818, his and her blazers. So not really utility, but there's some quite nice shaping to it. So you can always sort of pattern hack a couple of patterns together to get a bit more of a fitted look. McCall's 5252. You can tell by the number that this is a pattern that's been around for a little while, but it's a staple. So it's a fleece. They've done it in a fleece. You could make it in a boucle or a tweed to give it a more jackety feel. So you can either have it a pullover over your head or a zip all the way up the front, and then there's various different options to have it with just a stand-up collar or a hood. So quite a few in that one. And then we've got a couple a bit like Damien's, but he's had the big flappy lapels bit over the shoulder, which form the top of the pocket. So this is a it's called Palmer Pletch fitting. I've not used one of these patterns, but they're designed so that you can make pattern adjustments on them easily to make them fit you. So this is 6613. Okay, and then this is another shirt pattern. It's got some more detailing on it, so a bit more cowboy style like Damien's. Okay, and that is 7980. So that's it, a quick one to wrap up this week really. I haven't really got much more to say. Look forward to next week. I'm not sure what the theme is for next week, but I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for listening. Bye.